I'm Dave Kaiser. Thanks for joining us for this look at Crystal Financial Planning, looking at the vision for the past, present, and future. And I'm honored to be joined by the mayor, Jim Adams. Welcome once again, Jim.
Thank you.
We're going to give you a little breakdown of how the financial visioning is happening for the city of Crystal. A few things to talk about are, in the past, Jim, the history of it has been that the city was traditionally a pay-to-go city. We're going to explain that in just a second. In the 90s, it changed to bonding and some assessments that occurred, and now the city, as of 2017, looking to shift back. So let's give people some definitions.
Okay.
First, pay as you go. Give us a definition of what that means and maybe some recent examples of how that was used in the city.
Well, pay as you go is pretty simple. I think a lot of people apply that in their personal finances. Basically, if you need a vehicle and you're saving money for a car, you build up some funds until you can pay for that car, and then you pay for that car. It's not using financing, it's not using debt, it's not using credit cards. It's having the money for whatever you're purchasing before you purchase it.
Let's talk about some examples. One that goes back about 6-7 years would be fire trucks. Explain that for us.
Fire trucks was, with West Metro Fire, they bought 4 brand new fire trucks. They were fairly state-of-the-art, pretty good price tag. And between New Hope and Crystal, we had to come up with the funds pretty quickly, and we were able to pay that from cash. So we just took that bill and paid for it. And that's kind of was the first that I remember in Crystal of us going back to that pay-as-you-go. I know there were other examples, but that's the one that sticks in my mind.
Another more recent example, if you drive down West Broadway, you see the Public Works building. Tell us about that example and how that was paid for.
Well, the Public Works facility was paid for with all cash. We had a huge debate about whether we should use bonding or whatnot. We had the majority, about $10 million worth of savings to apply to that project. It was about a $14 million project. And we were able to borrow from some of our other funds and make it happen with cash. So we did that entirely as a pay-as-you-go, not using debt style of financing. So.
All right, a couple other recent examples, the park master planning, some of the improvements to the parks you're seeing, water main breaks and city wells, another project that was taken care of as pay-as-you-go. The question residents might have is, where did that money come from for those pay-as-you-go projects? And again, the need is to replace those funds. Is that correct?
That's correct. We always save money for capital needs. Whether we save them at the proper rate, it was kind of the big challenge that we have. We bought some of those funds down so that we didn't have to pay the finance charges. The Public Works facility, if we would have bonded for that entire thing, we would have spent almost $6 million in interest paid to the banks. We didn't want to do that. So consequently, some of our funds are not in real good shape. So we need to bring them back into good shape by increasing our capital.
We'll talk about that in just a second of how that's going to happen. So we mentioned definitions. Let's talk quickly about the definition of bonding and some of the examples there. And the biggest example is street reconstructions. Tell us about the bonding, how that works, and how that pays for projects like streets in the past.
Okay. Street reconstruction used assessments, and inside of assessments is bonding. For those people who can't afford to pay for it, cash out of their pocket for the assessment, it goes onto their property taxes, and that's underwritten by bonds, which has interest involved in it. And so the people who can't afford it the most are the people who are paying interest for the project. So it becomes more costly for the people who can least afford it.
All right, let's talk about the future now. Moving ahead to what the city is looking to do. What needs to happen in the next few years and into the future to set up this structure to become pay-as-you-go, and especially for bigger projects like a new police station and the Public Works project related to street reconstruction?
Okay, a couple things. We stopped doing assessments. So the big piece there is that when we did that, we cut revenue by about $60 million in today's dollars. That's a huge cut. Now, when we did that, we never intended it to be a tax cut. If we do nothing to replace those funds, it becomes an unplanned tax cut of, I think it works out to $2.4 million per year. That's a big dollar amount. That essentially is what we need to replace, and we can replace that in a number of ways. We can do it by increasing the tax levy. We also have different types of funds that come from outside the city. And this year specifically, fiscal disparities, we're seeing a fairly large increase in that. And we'll be taking those revenues that come from outside the city and applying those to our capital needs. So this year, I think we went a long way getting to that point where we probably got halfway there. So the next few years, we're going to have to do little increases just so it's not so painful. But the idea is to try not to have it all come to the levy and have it not all land on the taxpayers in Crystal.
So what is the timing then on the street reconstruction, the next series of street reconstruction happening? And people should understand too that it's not just the street, the top of the street that you're talking about, it's everything underneath.
Right. And it's more than everything underneath the street. Last time when we did street reconstruction, it wasn't just the top mill and overlay, it was, you know, more underneath at the base coat. This time it's the utilities underneath the street itself. So we're going to have to rebuild the streets just to get to the utilities. So we've funded through, we're starting to fund through utilities. We've had some increases in our utility rates. And that's because we see that coming, that we're going to have to replace those utilities. But we're not going to take the whole street reconstruction when we do those utilities and take them out of your water bill. We need to fund that, and it's going to be equivalent to what we experienced in the last 25 years since the early 90s.
Final question, so let's talk about what has happened this time of the year for 2020. What adjustments were made and what the residents are seeing as far as their taxes this year, and what do you see happening in the next 5 to 10 years?
Well, this year we've seen a tax levy increase of almost 5%, which is going to be applied towards capital. That is initially going to go towards the police station. We expect to have a new police station by '23. And what we will do is when we're done with that police station, we will repurpose the money that we're raising for that and apply it to the street reconstruction in the future when we need to do the utilities. That's going to be about, we're going to be hitting that right after the police station. It's not going to ramp up for another 10 years, but we do have some spots that really do need some repairs, and we're going to hit those hot spots first.
Very good. All right, there's 7 minutes of a quick overview of budgeting in the city of Crystal. Mayor, thanks for your time again. Thank you for all the information.
Thank you.